Hi, this is Kimball Bullington. We're in the analyze phase still and rounding out with verifying causes. And we go back to our diagram of the data analysis and process analysis. The tools that we use in the verifying causes are a variety: scatter diagrams, coded or stratified versions of Explorer tools. So what does that mean? So for instance, if you were using a frequency distribution, then you might, instead of doing one grand frequency distribution, you might do two that you overlaid on each other and use like a day shift, night shift. You might use supplier A, supplier B. I don't know what the particular stratification would make the most sense. Same thing with Pareto analysis. So Pareto, you've sorted defects by categories, but let's make up some new categories and look at it differently. Maybe our categories are not telling us everything we need to see. So that's the idea there in hypothesis testing. So we can go back to the Pareto analysis tool, maybe look at a different set of categories. We can use scatter diagrams, frequency distributions, and so on. On the process side, we have data collection tools, and then back to process maps again. One of the most common data collection tools is a check sheet. So here you see an example, and you have categories that are like the usual suspects, and you just make it easy for people to collect data. And in this case, I just make tally marks there. You can also do this if you're looking at a particular type of defect and you're looking at location on a product. So we would do this with our bathtubs if we were looking at, so for instance, we looked at cracks. So when we saw these little surface cracks, we would have a tally mark saying, okay, there's a crack. But we would put the tally mark on the location of the tub where the crack was occurring. So if it was related to the tool, and usually it was, then we could say, okay, what part of the tool do we need to deal with, or do we need to deal with several different parts of the tool? So data collection tools, then process maps again, and then control charts to verify stability and even document improvements. So this first section here, the process is not centered. You say, let's just imagine that this line here is where you're really targeting, and this is off the center, and it's not stable. You have a point that's outside the control limits, and then you're able to stabilize the process, and so that reduces the variation, and you've centered it, and so that's great. But then maybe you make discover in this process ways to make additional improvements, and when you do, after you have sufficient time to calculate new control limits, then you verify that, hey, we've reduced the variation even more. So it's actually a really good selling tool for improvements, because you can say, okay, we've improved, we've made actual measurable improvements. Now let's go into the deliverables for the analyze phase. What you should expect to deliver is the potential causes you've identified, which ones you decided to investigate and why, what data you collected to verify that the causes, and how you interpreted that data, because when you present the data, you may find not everyone interprets it the same way. Capability analysis and job analysis. Again, capability analysis is looking at the natural existing variation in your process and comparing that with the actual requirements. Graphical analysis, we've had Pareto charts, we've had scatter diagrams, histograms we've talked about. That whole process of sticky storming, a very visual sort of analysis. Root cause analysis, we talked about that, and verification. We've examined our process and identified potential bottlenecks, disconnects, and redundancies. We can see a good bit of this on a process map. We've conducted a value and cycle time analysis, locating areas where time and resources are devoted to tasks not critical to the customer. We talked about, for instance, the idea that we've got approval signatures that really aren't doing any good. We've analyzed data about the process and its performance to help stratify the problem. And this idea of stratification is it happening more on the night shift versus the day shift versus the what do you call the shift in the middle of the night? I've gone blank. Or is it have you stratified by suppliers, by material technique, by maybe a design change or so? Have you looked at possible sources? And then should our project focus on process design or redesign or process improvement? And on the analyze phase, you've basically gotten a sign off from your sponsor that this is the way that we'll proceed. So next up, I'm sorry, if it's process design redesign, then we understand the process, and maybe we have some idea, maybe even a future state process map. Process improvement, we've looked at root causes and narrowed it down to the vital few. So some troubleshooting in the analyze phase. Team bogs down in analysis, can't identify root causes of problems, jump to conclusions before all the data's in. Before we have the analyze toll gate, we've documented commitments made to the black belts during the measure toll gate review, compiled information about progress, made this as visual as possible, and decided on a sequence for the presentation. For each message, how can that information best be presented? Might be thinking in terms of types of charts. Assign a person for each part of the presentation, prepare an agenda for the toll gate review, and do a dry run. And then finally, we're ready for improve. And we'll deal with that in the next video. Thanks.